Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football here for a special edition live stream here at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We've got Phil Steele on the line, who, for most of you, should need no introduction. And you probably know him more by his codes and his abbreviations and everything that goes into that power-packed, information-packed publication that he produces each and every summer for all of us who love college football. Phil Steele joining us. Phil, how you doing this afternoon?
You know, I am doing great, Mark, and I got to tell you, so much better this year than last year when we were wondering if there's going to be a football season. Schedules are changing, conferences are canceling, and then coming back. This year, I got to talk to a little over 110 of the head coaches out of the 130 at Ohio State, at Washington, at Utah. And that's the reason I picked Washington over Oregon. So that's a difference between the power ratings and the actual ranking of the teams.
Now, we know that the trajectory for Michigan football has been down. The COVID year was not kind to them at 2-4. Even the 9-4 finish the season before with 2 late losses there. But at the same time, I'm running down the rankings, Phil, and I got to say, Toledo, Texas San Antonio, FAU, Western Michigan, all in front of the Wolverines at 60.
Yeah, and those rankings are based on final record at the end of the year. Meanwhile, the power poll, I've got Michigan number 40 in the country, and they'll be better than last year. 17 returning starters, 10 on offense, 7 on defense. Almost every team in the country has 15, 16, 17 returning starters this year. But you look at Michigan's schedule, it's 12th toughest in the country. They play Washington, a team I'm very high on this year at home. They play Wisconsin on the road, Nebraska on the road, Penn State on the road, even a tough game against underrated Maryland on the road. And at home, they're playing Ohio State, Indiana, Northwestern. They are the toughest teams out of the West, play an extremely tough schedule. I think the ceiling for Michigan this year is probably 9-3. The floor is probably 5-7. So call in between there about 7 wins, and that gets you about number 60 in the rankings.
Phil, when the games were scheduled, I can't imagine that Indiana, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, anyone would have thought could have factored possibly into a college football playoff. But Cincinnati being that undefeated team last year at number 9 coming into the postseason. Of course, we saw the runs that UCF made in 2017 and 18. But Cincinnati has those 2 huge opportunities to show that they can play with the big boys.
Yeah, and if any team in the 4-team playoff era from the group of 5 is going to make the playoff, this would be it. Because Cincinnati, of course, last year finished number 6 in the country in the regular season. In the Peach Bowl against Georgia, led the majority of the game, ended up losing by 3, and finished number 8 in the country. This year, I think they entered the season in the top 10 of the AP poll, and that's going to give them a head start of where any other group of 5 team has ever started. Then, as you touched on the schedule, 3rd game of the season, they play a ranked Indiana. Let's say they start at number 10, beat a ranked Indiana on the road. They move up maybe to number 8. 2 weeks later, they go to Notre Dame and play them in South Bend. Notre Dame will be a top 10 team. Beat them on the road. Now you're moving up to maybe 6 in the country. A couple teams in front of you lose. They could very well make it. So I think Cincinnati's got that opportunity, but they, of course, have to run the table to get there.
Got some questions coming in from Triple Sharp and others representing the Ohio State quarterback situation, of course, with C.J. Stroud being the likely candidate, but still he's going to have to perform in August to hold off Jack Miller and Kyle McCord. So how did you account for that in your publication?
Yeah, and, you know, watching the quarterback situation closely, I just feel C.J. Stroud's going to be the man this year. And I think not only quarterback of Ohio State, but probably be one of the Heisman finalists with that receiving core he's throwing to, led by Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. It's the best receiving core in the country, and the offensive line's outstanding. It is a very close race, and Coach Day has not announced who the starter is, but I believe it'll be C.J. Stroud, and I think he's going to have an excellent season. Kyle McCord, Jack Miller, both quality QBs, but I'm going with C.J. Stroud.
How important do you think experience is at quarterback? Because just reviewing the last 8 national championship games, so if you take us back to 2013, that Jameis Winston, Nick Marshall matchup at quarterback, Auburn, Florida State, run through those 8 years of championship games, so that's 16 quarterbacks. I'm counting 8 that went into that particular season as inexperienced quarterbacks with no starts under their belts. So maybe the experience factor is a bit overrated. And we've got, of course, Alabama and Ohio State in play, and Clemson to a certain extent, but DJ certainly was under fire against Boston College and Notre Dame last year. But two of the superpowers that have basically inexperienced quarterbacks.
Yeah, all you have to do is go back to last year, and while Mac Jones got experience a little bit of experience at the quarterback position, starting a couple of games, he was still a first-year starter. 77% completions, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think we've proven that teams that even with inexperienced quarterbacks can win the national title, and that's a great stat you had. 8 out of the 16 teams in the playoff.
Yes, we're getting comments coming in, just not asking questions, but just confirming that you do an outstanding job, and people look forward, college football fans, to your publication each and every summer. No question about that. Again, we had asked this earlier. Want to make sure that this is getting through to everyone. The 12-team playoff, you are not a fan. Phil, I thought you were a perfect college football analyst, but I got to say, I love the expanded playoffs. I'm not happy with the 12 teams because I don't agree with the bye format. I don't think that there's a fair and equitable way that is built on metrics that you can determine who earned a bye. So I don't like that portion of it. I'm for the expanded playoffs. You would like to see it stay at 4.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's really irrelevant, a moot point, because I was a 4-team advocate back when we had the BCS, and I wrote about it for 10 years. Finally came to fruition, and then the last 3 or 4 years, I've been saying we need to keep the 4-team playoff format, but we're going to 12, so no sense really fighting it. I think the one part that probably we're going to see is that the regular season and maybe even the championship games are going to be a little less important. Alabama plays Georgia this year in the SEC championship game, for an example. Winner is in the playoff, loser is out. It's an all or nothing win situation. If those same 2 teams enter with 0 or 1 wins in the future when it's 12-team playoff, winners in the playoff, losers in the playoff. So it's not a have-all, be-all game anymore.
One last question, Phil, then we'll let you go. You know, you've got obligations just consistently throughout the day, but as you did this through the 80s and 90s in particular, you know, if you would grab your magazine in particular and look at the preseason rankings from year to year, you would see close to half of each conference over the span of 10 years represented in the top 10 to 15 teams in the nation. Now we've been locked into this Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, then to a certain extent, Georgia and Oklahoma. Do you think that that's made the sport grow a little bit stale?
You know, I do think it has a little bit. I think fans are, and that's why we're going to the 12-team playoff, Mark, to get more fans involved in the playoff. No doubt about it. I think you know, when you got the same 4 teams, and you know, people say who's in your Final Four this year, and I go, well, I really went out on a limb. I've got Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma in my Final Four this year. It's not really going out on a limb, but also if you put those teams in there every year, you're pretty much right every year because they're the ones that get in there. So I think that's the reason we're going to the 12-team playoff. And
there's no reason to go out on a limb if you truly believe that that's what's going to happen. You got to stay true to your formula and who you believe are the best teams are. Phil Steele's college football preview. If you haven't ordered it, please do. Just look him up online and you'll find it right there. Phil, thank you so much for stopping by.
Hey, a lot of fun, Mark. Always enjoy our conversations, my friend.
Absolutely.
Enjoy talking football with you.
Thank you so much.